All right, looks good. Okay, well, I'm going to call us to order. It is 1:01 p.m. This is the regular quarterly meeting of the Altadena Library District Board of Trustees Budget Committee.
Looks good.
And it
Okay,
is,
well, I'm going to call us to order.
Sorry.
It is 1:00.
It's okay. Good. I was like, who is talking? That person's the worst. It was me. I was feeding back. All right, so it's February 3rd, and we will begin with our roll call, our two trustees on the committee. So I am here, obviously, and Trustee Wilkerson. Camila, I need a hear from you for the record. Camila, can you hear me?
Looks like she might be frozen.
Oh no. Oh, now she's gone. Well, see, this is why we do the roll call. We'll give
I'll let you know. I'm sure she'll
bounce
be
right
coming
back.
back in.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's see here.
Well, while we're waiting for her, for the record, let's just introduce everybody else who's with us. We've got our district director, Nikki Winslow. Andrew, if you want to just introduce yourself briefly.
Of course. So I'm Andrew Flynn. I'm a managing director with California Municipal Advisors. We are a general municipal advisory firm that specializes in supporting public agencies in a whole variety of financial decision-making and various action items. And we will be talking to you today about pension policies.
Terrific. Thank you for being with us. And we also have with us from Bailey, Ian Berg. Ian, you want to say just a quick hello?
Sure. Hey, my name's Ian Berg. We're with Bailey CPAs and Business Advisors. We consult with the Library District on a regular basis.
Well, we're gonna
Coming back in right now.
okay, perfect. I was gonna say
Yep,
I'm gonna wait because we
technology.
yeah.
You'd think after 2 years or so, we'd be just so good at this. But
Sorry.
No worries.
I've been working all day from this spot. And of course, as soon as I join this meeting, I get your connection is unstable and it boots me out. Even
Ideal.
though I've had several.
That's on brand. All right. Well, Camila, we were just doing quick rounds of introductions. So we'll continue with our roll call. I am here. Trustee Wilkerson.
I am here.
All right, perfect. Anything that we need to move around on the agenda, or is everybody happy with it? I'm good with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and adopt the agenda. I request a motion to adopt.
So moved.
All right, and I will second because there's only two of us. So we'll take a roll call vote because this is a Brown Act compliant body and that's how we roll. Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I vote for me. Okay. I don't believe we have any public comments that have come in. If we do, or if folks are at home watching on YouTube, hi. Hope you're having a great Thursday. This is Budget Committee Realness coming at you. And we will always entertain public comments if they come in at other times. So we'll move now to the consent calendar. It's item 3 on your agenda, beginning on page 3. We've got the minutes of the Budget Committee meeting held on November 4th. So I will request a motion to approve the consent calendar. Camila, you have to make all the motions here. I'm really sorry.
So moved.
This is annoying. Seconded, and we'll take a vote. Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And I vote for me. All right, so those minutes are approved. We have no unfinished business, so we'll blow right into our new business. So we've got 2 items today. One, a discussion about our unfunded liability policy, and Andrew's here to chat with us about that. And then we've got the review of our fiscal year budget, so basically the preliminary steps to our mid-year budget adjustment. And so let's jump right in to our unfunded accrued liability policy. And Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time today. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Can you all see my screen? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So as the screen suggests, we are going to, I'm going to give you a preliminary overview of your pension liabilities and talk about why it's important to have a pension management policy. really as an overview for thinking about pensions more holistically and the challenges that they can provide and how to proactively manage them. I very quickly, it's just me on the call today. My colleague Cameron sends his regrets, but I am, as I said earlier, I am with California Municipal Advisors. I'm a managing director. I've worked in the public finance space for about 20 years on a whole variety of topics, but have been heavily focused on pension management over the last few years as it's become more and more of a challenge for public agencies. So your pension funding status. So you guys have 3 pension plans with CalPERS currently. As you can see, you have your miscellaneous second, and your PEPRA miscellaneous plans. Now, again, recognizing we're constrained on time, I won't spend a lot of time here. But what I want to point out here is we're really looking at these 3 key numbers. Your total accrued liability is the total amount of benefit that your employees, past and present, have accrued up until 6/30/2020. So that's that $9 million. The market value of assets is how much money you have with CalPERS to fulfill those obligations, okay? Which, as you can see, you're about 2.8 million short on the miscellaneous plan. That is your unfunded actuarial liability. So what you can see is that you're about 68.2% funded. As a general rule, we are looking for public agencies to be in that 90 to 95% funded status to be considered healthy. I'll explain why in a little bit more detail in a minute, but suffice it to say, we spend a lot of time focused on this funded percent in order to understand kind of that health of a plan and how you are thinking about it going forward, because there's some dynamics with your unfunded liabilities that you can't just make it go away. It's going to be an evolving thing. So we need to have a metric that we use to understand health on a go-forward basis. So for our presentation purposes, I'm going to focus really on your miscellaneous plan. These other 2, while they're not quite where we would hope they would be, they're doing better, and they're smaller because they're newer plans. So this is a different way of looking at your unfunded liabilities. So the pie chart is your total pension accrued benefit. The market value of assets is how much money, again, you have in CalPERS now to fulfill the obligation to your employees. And the red is that unfunded liability. So that 2.8 million is a principal balance. And the easiest way to think about it is like debt. So you owe 2.8 million in principal, but it amortizes over a period of time. So currently that's amortizing over a 24-year period. And so you have an interest cost associated with it. Much like a mortgage, you're going to pay principal and interest over time. So if you stayed on the current amortization schedule of 24 years, you're going to pay an additional 2.2 million in interest cost on top of that 2.8 million in principal. So $5.1 million total that you would be paying out. Obviously, that's very expensive. And I think that's the most important thing to recognize is that when you think about what the interest cost is on these obligations, it's the current discount rate of CalPERS. CalPERS' current discount rate is 6.8%. Now, again, we're all living in an environment where interest rates have been very low for a long time. 6.8 is probably by far the most expensive debt that the district has. So thinking about it as debt and understanding it and using a proactive approach to pay it down and manage it, is frankly, I mean, A, will save you money, but B, it's just good government to mitigate those costs long-term and manage them proactively.
Andrew, can I jump in with a quick question here?
Please.
Sorry,
Of
is that
course.
okay? So two things to clarify, and I will also say that, I've been hearing about all of these items for years, but I am excited to dive in today because I'm not sure if I fully understand all the ins and outs. And when I say that, I mean, I'm 100% sure that I don't understand all the ins and outs. So first of all, what we're looking at here on this slide, this is only our miscellaneous category, right? So that doesn't include that like other $100,000 or whatever of second,
Correct.
tier 2 and PEPRA. So this is just the miscellaneous piece.
Correct.
So a couple of questions, and maybe this is kind of a combo, you and Nikki/Ian. Are we continuing to incur debt in liability? Are we continuing to incur liability in this column, or is all liability on a go-forward basis in those other 2 columns?
So you got straight to the heart of the challenge here. So what happens is that, again, your employees are on a defined benefit plan,
Right.
right? So again, you've negotiated those contracts, and so they have a defined benefit. And you contribute money to CalPERS. CalPERS is essentially your money manager on this, right? They hold the money and they invest it,
Right.
but they are also the actuary. So they are
Okay.
determining over time, right? Do you have enough money?
Right.
And they're calculating that on a go-forward basis. So here's the thing. Imagine a situation where 35 years ago, they said, okay, we assume that people are going to live to be 70.
Sure.
And so you contributed your normal payments, assuming that people are going to live to be 70. But now 20 odd years later, people are living to be 85.
And
That's-
assume that people's healthcare costs X amount per month, when in fact it costs like 3X that probably.
Exactly. That's unfunded liability.
Okay.
So
yes.
it evolves over time,
Right.
right? It's not a static thing.
Right.
Again, CalPERS last year had a very good investment year.
Mhm.
So your UAL will go down. But then another year it can go up. So
Mhm.
it's an evolving structure. It's not a static thing. You can't just
Got it.
pay it off and have it go away.
Right.
You can pay it down and you can proactively manage it.
Right. Great. That helps a lot. I guess my third question here is, who sets the 7% interest rate and who gets that money? Like, who's making money off of our unfunded liability?
Your employees are the ones who are benefiting. So think of it this way. This is a time value of money exercise.
Mhm.
So these are benefits that your employees are going to get. And in so much as CalPERS has that 6 million, they are earning 7%, knowing that they are targeting benefit payouts. That's where that money is going. And they're assuming that it's growing at the discount rate.
Right.
If they don't have that money, they're still assuming that this whole pie is growing at the discount rate.
Mhm.
So when they don't have money and it's a shortfall, you have to make that up.
Right.
So it's not that CalPERS is getting it. It's not, you're not paying someone else outside of that. This is about fulfilling the obligations to the employees as it's currently assumed that the payouts will be needed over time.
Right. And obviously, like, yes, that we should do that. Like, that is our obligation and that's a good thing and all that. I guess what I'm trying to understand is, in the same way that you're saying, like, you can think about this like debt, right? If somebody's charging you a 7% interest rate, usually that's, that is representing some sort of profit margin for them. So I just want to understand, is the 7% interest, is that CalPERS basically saying, we know that inflation exists, we know that like all these things exist, and so that's their sort of CYA margin? Like, what is that what the 7% is, or is that?
Trustee Katie and Andrew, maybe I can jump in on this one. So like, look at the red piece of that pie there.
Yeah.
That 2.8 million.
Mhm.
As Andrew was saying, that's money they don't have.
Correct.
So they're basically just charging you for them not being able to earn interest on that dollar. So they could have earned 7 cents on the dollar, but they didn't. So now we have to pay that 7 cents, like Andrew was saying.
I mean, okay.
Because
CalPERS. I mean, no, it makes sense. Like, I'm in the wrong business, but yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Because they still have to pay the benefits, and this is an evolving.
Yeah,
liability.
I got that. That makes sense. Thank you. So that represents the earned interest delta that they're not getting, but that they're still basically on the hook for. So we're picking it up.
Right.
Well, you're on the hook for it.
Well, yeah, it's our money. We owe that money. Right. But they're managing it. So they're saying
Right.
like, hey, that's a passed along cost to us, basically.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yeah, that's the heart of it.
Okay.
So again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that this unfunded liability, knowing that it fluctuates over time,
Sure.
is minimized, and that you have a proactive strategy to keep those 7% costs as low as possible, right? You don't want to be carrying that additional UAL over time if you don't have to.
Right. It sucks. I mean, it sucks that we would pay an additional $2.2 million of taxpayer money for basically to deal with like that sucks. That's not that doesn't represent a benefit to really anybody.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I don't want to go too far into the weeds, but think of this as this is a challenge of a generational equity issue.
Sure.
UAL is current taxpayers making up for missed assumptions that past taxpayers probably should have paid.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because again, an assumption was wrong, or an investment number didn't get achieved. That UAL, which again should have been paid when the benefits were accrued, is now future taxpayers are paying for that shortfall. So again, you want to stay ahead of it, because again, you want current taxpayers to be paying for, or ratepayers, right? To be paying for things that were of benefit in the past. You want them paying forward, not from the past. So this is a multifaceted challenge that you want to, again, keep the UAL as minimal as possible while still moving forward.
Sure. That makes all the sense in the world. Okay. I feel like I derailed you long enough. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, that's all right. That's why I'm here. All right. So your funding history, this is gives you a picture on your miscellaneous plan of your shortfall over the last decade.
Wow.
You owe $1.5 million more, but that's a relative number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over time, that number will fluctuate. I don't worry so much about the number. What I worry about is that funded percent.
Yeah.
Again, you want to keep your funded percent probably above that 90% level.
Mm-hmm.
And again, over this decade, you've gone from 80% down to 68%,
mm-hmm.
which means more UAL, more cost.
So what happened in 2018? Like, I'm always interested in where the lines cross. So why, like, what happened basically between 2015 and 2020 such that,
so
our unfunded liability grew?
Well, so
dramatically.
Yeah, what's really happening here is, honestly, these are in many respects sins from the financial crisis that we're dealing with. So CalPERS had a huge loss, as the whole global market did back in 08, 09.
Right.
They lost 40% of the funded status, over about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
They have had very good economic or investment performance over the last decade. But the problem is that shortfall, that 40% shortfall, has consistently been there. And again, as I showed you, that 7%, it builds each year. So every time there's shortfall, it keeps growing.
Sure.
So again, you guys are doing everything you're supposed to do, right? You're paying CalPERS when you get the bill, everything, you're doing everything right. This is a structural challenge right now because of the financial crisis from 14 years ago now.
Right. And capitalism. I mean, there's a lot of structural reasons that this is bad, but sure. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. So
Gotcha.
Again, and you guys are actually, I would say I work with a lot of public agencies. You guys are very much right in that spot where everybody is.
Yeah.
Overall, CalPERS is about 70% funded for all the plans in CalPERS. So you're about right where, again, we would expect you to be. The question is how do you get out of that hole as efficiently as possible?
Sure.
All right. So for me, this slide really will show you the heart of it. These blue bars down here at the bottom, this is your normal cost. So this is the payments you make for benefits being accrued in the current year.
Mm-hmm.
Make sense?
Yep.
Obviously, the red bars are unfunded liability payments. So these are your annual payments, and you can see how the UAL is becoming a larger and larger percent of that overall payment. So you've gone from 71% back in 2017 to almost 90% of your payments are to pay UAL. And that trend is projected to grow. And that's where we want to say, okay, how do we, again, give you more budget predictability, which is important, right? You got other things that you want to do with the money, but then also reduce that exposure to that discount rate expense.
Yeah, that's rough. This is a rough slide.
Yeah, it is. But it really.
But I think it makes your point. Yeah, that's right.
All right. So we've kind of already talked about this, the cost drivers. There've been a variety of things that have happened over the years. I will just say that in this top section, back in 2000, thereabouts, CalPERS was super funded. Super funded is when they have more money than they are projected to need at that point in time. They had 128% of the assets that they needed at the time.
Does that money ever flow back to agencies when they have more money than they need?
It will stay there. It will stay in the plans. You don't get it back. It stays there to fulfill those benefits. But what I will tell you is that it became a bit of a political football back in 2000, and the state legislature passed, a couple bills that basically enriched existing plan participants. Again, you can imagine everybody's like, wait, you got all this quote unquote extra money, give it back to us. We earned it, right? That's generally speaking.
Okay. Yep.
Right. And so that's when you got the 3% at 50, arguments, of enriching existing plan participants. And so that passed back in, the early 2000s. And so you saw a trend of the funded percent dropping over time. So it accomplished exactly what it was supposed to do. And that happened. But then after the financial crisis, we dropped 40%. And we've never been able to claw back. So you can imagine that if they'd never done pass that legislation, we'd probably be around 90 to 95% funded right now.
Right.
Overall.
Right.
But again, hindsight is 2020. These are long-term investments. Now, the last decade, like I said, CalPERS actually does very well in terms of hitting their discount rate on average. Yeah, again, these are long-term investments. Think about it like a 401k, right? You're going to have a good year. You're going to have a bad year. The goal is to focus on long-term investments.
Sure.
Because every dollar I put in now is going to grow over time and fulfill those benefits in the future. So this last decade, they've done very well. They've consistently hit their discount rate or exceeded it, except for a couple of years. The problem is that they haven't been able to earn consistently above the discount rate, which would have reduced that unfunded liability.
Yeah.
So those are kind of investment perspectives, but there's also the structural challenges, which I mentioned originally, right? People live longer. Right. Healthcare, you mentioned healthcare gets more expensive. These are structural, things that CalPERS has to account for that builds the UAL over time, because it just wasn't accounted for when they accrued those benefits originally.
Right.
So there are structural challenges that CalPERS works through and has to account for as understanding evolves over time.
Sure. And those are presumably built into the actuarial
yes, and
projection, and that's why it keeps.
That's why it fluctuates over time. Is some years they're good years, some years they're bad years, and it continues to fluctuate.
Okay.
So this is just to give you a sense of CalPERS investment performance over the last 30 years. You can see the dark blue bars here are years where CalPERS performed above the discount rate. The light blue is when they performed below the discount rate, but positive. And then the red years, here you have the .com crisis or the .com crash. And then you have the financial crisis of 08, 09. So overall, again,
not bad, not bad at all, honestly.
Exactly. That's exactly it. CalPERS has consistently hit their targets.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to have bad years, but overall, over a 30-year period, you're talking 8.8%.
Yeah.
So CalPERS is dropping the discount rate this year to 6.8%. So if you think about it, and I tend to discount the 1990s just because the economy was very different.
Right.
If you say over a 20-year period, they're probably going to earn around 7.6%, and the discount rate is 6.8%. That means that your UAL will decline over time. So that's a good thing, right? They're achieving their goals. The discount rate is what they assume they will earn. So if they earn above it, that means your unfunded liability drops.
Right.
Okay. So that's 7.6%. But I can tell you this last year, this 21.3%, that was a great year. If you take that away, their 20-year average was 5.5%.
Well, and even if they're above that target, it's not gonna, the UAL is not gonna drop faster than we're gonna accrue it. So
exactly. Well, it will drop faster than you accrue UAL.
Okay.
Because that's a principal payment that they.
Okay. All right.
But the short of it is, and you're on the right track, is that at 7.6%, that's not enough excess earnings to make your UAL completely disappear.
Right.
And if you're on the 5.5% end, it's going to continue to grow.
Right.
So it really boils down to, again, these are the district's obligations. So let's have a strategy to proactively manage.
Yep.
And it's not about making it go away. It's about keeping it as manageable as possible.
For sure.
All right. So this is where you are over time, or right now, as of this most recent CalPERS report. You can see it's a big, dome-shaped curve that you're climbing. Probably just made this, $170,000 payment, and you're projected to go up to 320.
Ooh.
Yes. Now that is changing. Again, we just had a 21.3% year, so this will actually, some of this will come off the top because you're going to have a base that will be to your credit. But regardless, it's still a big hill to climb.
Yeah.
And again, it's, regardless of the strategies you use, you want to have a strategy of this didn't happen overnight. It's not going to go away overnight. What do you do every year? And it's not only a question of what does staff do, but it's what does the board, think about it? How do you collectively understand these things that need to occur? Because again, staff changes, boards change, but you need to have a framework within which there is that consistency so that you can be addressing this proactively over time.
Yep.
All right. So again, I've kind of said all of this. There's really two sides to this coin here. One is how do you create budget predictability? So short-term cash flow management. And the other side of it is how do you reduce your exposure to that 7% or 6.8% interest rate? Both are the right answers. Some agencies will say, we need so much budget predictability. Let's figure out how to lower our costs as much as possible. Others will say, we are cash rich and let's pay this down so that we're not exposed to that discount rate. The vast majority are somewhere in between. It's not something that it's typically not a black or white, it's a gray area.
Yeah.
They're both valid. And the journey that we're going to go on is finding where you are and what are the tools that you can use this year, and then the tools on a go forward basis that are going to keep you at a healthy level rather than just trying to say it's this or that, because it's not. It's a process.
Sure.
Which is why we go to really focusing on this from a policy perspective. There are strategies that you can use, but it really is about saying, what is our policy target, right? What percentage do we want to target as a board? It could be 90%, it could be 95%. You don't want to say 100% because CalPERS can have good years.
Right.
And what can happen is that you've put in extra money and then they have a great year and now you're at 107%.
Yeah, which
means you didn't need to put in that much extra money. You could have used that for something else.
Sure.
So it's developing a target that says this is a good, healthy level. We can accept some unfunded liability, but we have a strategy for managing it while not overexposing, your general resources, to,
Just this, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's really the heart of why a pension policy, because it is a discipline.
Yeah.
And this is the most effective way for an agency to implement one of those things long term.
Well, and it's a long-term strategy, right? Like we can't just be like, well, we're going to pay $500,000 this year. That's not
right.
Gonna...
That's exactly.
Right.
Well, you could.
We could, right? No, sure, right. But A, we don't have $500,000 extra dollars, and
right.
B, like I think what you're saying is exactly right. Like this is a problem that exists over the long durée, and we're going to fix it gradually. But yeah, it has to be in a consistent and like disciplined way. That seems right.
Exactly. That's exactly it. All right. So this is really the journey that we are on that we're going to help with. So yeah, again, for Cal Muni advisors and my friends at Lease Law, again, step one is really about developing a policy. We do usually do this over the course of 2 or 3 months. It's really at your pace, but we walk through a process of I provide a more detailed explanation. We go into detail as to how all these mechanics work and why. We then start from a baseline policy that we've developed over the last few years with a whole variety of agencies as a starting point. And then it's really a collaborative process of understanding and learning and finding kind of the key metrics that the district wants to use to make sure that you're comfortable with the approach. And so it's a learning process, it's an education process, it's a discussion framework around this policy. And then at the end of that process, what we essentially are doing is we're providing you, with that policy that can be adopted by the board. As part of that process, at that point, we as a municipal advisor, I can't give you recommendations until I'm officially engaged. Sure. Legally, I'm not allowed to.
Yep.
But once we are engaged, we can then look at various financing strategies. So if the incremental steps aren't going to get you there quick enough, we can look at different, mechanisms that can be used to accelerate the process. But again, that's something that we would do as part of it. There's no cost to that unless there's a financing. So the
Right.
cost for the policy itself is $5,700.
Okay.
We do that very affordably because we do believe that it is important.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces of the puzzle, so the refunding or the refinancing strategies, we get paid out of cost of issuance. So
Makes
out
sense.
of
Yeah.
out of the financing costs,
Sure.
if the board decided to move down that type of path.
Right. That's built in. Sure. That makes sense. Camila, go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that I understand what's happening. So currently, Andrew, you represent, looks like Westlaw, but we are not currently engaged with the agency to do the policy work. Is that correct?
Right.
And okay, and so the goal of this is going back to the slide with the red and the blue bars where the reds were really high. The goal is to, if possible, bring, the red down some, but also manage it so that it doesn't keep going up and out of control. And the policy that you're suggesting or engaging your company or organization will take a proactive approach to help us be able to manage that so that it doesn't get out of control. Not necessarily go away completely, because it seems like that doesn't look like possible, but to just kind of keep it at a healthy level that doesn't hurt the district or its staff. Is that what I'm just want to make sure that I got it in a nutshell?
You nailed it. That is exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to be clear, Camila, our action today is to determine, and because this is less than $10,000, we don't necessarily need to go through like a formal RFP process, but to basically determine, like, do we as the budget committee think that this makes sense? Like that we should basically do this. We should hire Andrew and his team to, figure this out alongside us to solve all those problems he outlined. And then we'll make a recommendation one way or the other to the board to like say, yeah, we think you should take a full board vote on this and it's a good idea, or nope, we think Andrew's going to fly to Cabo and spend all the money on, God knows what. So yeah, that's what those are the only two options apparently. So that's our action item on this today. So it's just a recommendation to the board.
Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure that I don't understand all the details and nuances of all of the numbers, but I wanted to make sure I understood the overall, the bigger picture process of what was happening.
Yeah, and actually you nailed it. A lot of this for me is always about education. So again, a lot of this is deep diving into the topic and making sure that everybody really understands the key building blocks and how it works and why it works. If I was able to explain it in 20 minutes, believe me, I would be in Cabo because it is a complex topic. There are a lot of moving pieces. And so that's why we start with let's go through an education process. That's the policy development exercise really is about education. You get a policy at the end of it, right? It's implementable. But it really, the vast majority of the time is spent educating and discussing and understanding mechanics.
And when you say using the term policy, so this is a more of an organizational policy, not in the sense of like the staff need to review this and sign on. This is more for the entity in terms of like, this is how we handle, or this is how we are handling moving forward, managing that UAL, those numbers.
Correct. Yes. And so, so once the board, if the board were to adopt the policy, that gives Nikki, and Ian, right, or any other future staff, right, the ability to say, okay, this is a policy, we have to work within it. But the policy, the way the baseline is developed, it also has, essentially annual action items. Going into budget every year, here are the steps you need to go through, before you make recommendations for the upcoming year's budget. Here are steps to proactively say, these are steps we're taking, this year to keep the unfunded liability at the level that the board has set as our target.
Yep. Very cool.
Got it. And another question that I have is, obviously you have tons of experience doing this, but is this, I would imagine then that this is something very common that organizations or entities do to manage this process?
Yes, yeah, well, and really, like I said, yeah, I've been very focused on this particular topic for the last few years. We worked with a lot of agencies, really because, looking at it from a policy perspective has really, it's really only been over the last few years that agencies have kind of recognized that, this is probably the right approach. Again, like you, most people go, what is UAL? I know pensions and CalPERS is big, and I read about it on the news, right? There's been a disconnect over the years of what's the right approach to do this. So again, that's why we've come in and said, really, how do you affect a good strategy going forward? And that's why we've developed this policy over the last few years, working with all different types of agencies, whether cities or fire districts or water districts, other types of special districts. Again, because this has been a challenge. Frankly, I remember talking about long-term pension costs when I first started in this industry in the early 2000s. But it was only in the last 5 or 6 years people said, wait a minute, we actually need to have policies that are going to help agencies address this going forward. Before that, people were kind of just sticking their head in the sand saying it'll solve itself. Now, I don't mean that literally, but you can kind of imagine that people are like, it'll deal with itself. But we're kind of recognizing that, no, you need a proactive strategy that's going to, again, not make it go away, but keep costs manageable.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
A couple other questions from me, Andrew. So all this seems totally reasonable. I'm just interested in sort of understanding a little bit about the process. So our UAL currently is like 5.5, right? For that miscellaneous piece, right? So we're at like 5.5 million. What's the average sort of range that you guys work with? I mean, are we on the tiny end of things? Are we like making everybody go, ooh, that's not good? Like, what's your average range?
I would say that, I would say you're about average, to be honest. Again, a lot of the agencies that we work with, we specialize working with small to mid-sized agencies.
Okay.
That's really where our focus is.
Mm-hmm.
Again, you trust me, you can look at these numbers and you can see, large cities where these numbers are in hundreds of millions of dollars.
Of course.
Right.
Right.
But for us, again, that 3 million unfunded liability, it might be on the slightly small end, but again, it's relative.
Okay.
For me, it's more about that funded percent.
Got it. Okay.
That's the number that you want to focus on. And like I said, in that respect, you guys are right about where the average agency is.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. What is Cameron's role in all of this? What is the sort of legal part of this?
Sure. So two things. One, so I, as a municipal advisor, I can help you develop the policies. I can do all the staff report, work to get you to, a policy that you can adopt. Mm-hmm. If you are to engage and pursue a refinancing strategy, that's where you need a municipal advisor, but you would also need, legal counsel that specializes in this type of work.
Sure. Just like we have bond and disclosure counsel for issuing public debt for the CFD. Yeah, totally.
That's it.
Okay. Got it.
That's exactly it.
Got it. So the initial like $5,700 is really just you guys. And then if and when,
correct,
a second, that would be just like, that's your preferred vendor. Basically, like that's the person you're like, this is who does this for us.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And I will tell you that, I have worked very closely with Weiss Law on this. Again, they've contributed as much to the thinking in terms of the policy as I have.
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So they really do have a unique specialty. Obviously you can get a generic bond counsel, but in terms of the work around UAL, especially with smaller agencies, I would say that Cameron is unique in that respect.
Sure. Okay. All right. And it looks like I'm just looking through the agreement to see if there's anything that I've got a question about. I mean, it's pretty standard, so it all looks good to me. So you said 2 to 3 months is basically a reasonable time frame to imagine that we would arrive at some sort of policy, whatever those next steps may be.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. That's usually, and again, it's usually at your guys' pace.
Mhm.
If you said you wanted to have it done in a month, we could do it in a month.
Yeah, I don't think we need to do that.
But yeah, usually meetings and times and scheduling.
Okay. Got it. Okay. Right. Okay. So it looks like, sorry, let me just make sure I'm understanding the scope of the agreement. So I'm looking through, sorry, August suggested.
I have mine too, I understand.
So it looks like we've got an initial, basically A1. I'm on page 24 of the package. This is page 4 of the consulting agreement. So it looks like we've got an initial sort of phase of work to be completed by June 30th of this year. That is this policy development process. And that's the $5,700. Is it the case that things A2, 3, 4, 5, those are additional costs and separate agreements, or how does that kind of fall
Sure.
out?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So in short, the only thing that you're truly committing to is the 5,700.
Mhm.
Everything else is optional
Mhm.
within the structure. So again,
Right.
like I said, under the financing component,
Mhm.
we only get paid if there's a successful transaction.
Right.
The other thing I would call out is, well, there's a couple other items in there, and I'm not looking at it. I apologize.
That's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, there are a couple items in there for continuing disclosure reporting.
Right.
So if you need those things, if you've done a refinancing, those costs would be associated, but that's only associated with a refinancing.
Mhm.
Again, so it wouldn't come up if you choose not to go down that path.
Yep.
The one other item in there that is optional that I would call out is the annual review. So that we do on an annual basis. Most of the agencies we engage with, they say, great, we've got a policy, you've gotten us here.
Right.
Now what do we do next year? Right.
And that's that 1750 annual review.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's usually right. Again, think about, a few months before budget, right? Everything's getting compiled and getting ready for, the next annual budget meetings. We go in, we do the analysis. We look at where your CalPERS reports are. We look at where any, funds are that you've set aside. And we say, okay, based upon where you are today, these are the recommendations we would make to either get you closer to your target or keep you at your policy target.
Sure. That makes a ton of sense.
Yep. So I mean, that's really,
yeah.
that's the whole of the contract.
Okay, great. That answers, I think, all my questions. And it makes a ton of sense. Like, just like we do with the bond stuff, anything that's related to potential refinancing or debt issuance is basically built into the cost of the debt. So it sort of sorts
Very
itself
standard.
out there. Yeah, totally standard. Okay, I think that's all my questions. Camila, anything else? I mean, not like for today is all my questions. I have like a million questions about this.
No, I do not have any other questions.
Okay.
Well,
Perfect.
thank you very much for your time.
Thank
Really
you so much,
appreciate it.
Andrew. Really appreciate you being with us. It's
Yeah,
extremely helpful.
I'm always happy to help. So if you guys have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.
I think then that brings us to the actual, I'm going back to the agenda. It brings us back to our actual item. So, right. So item 5A. So Camila, you and I basically now need to figure out what our recommendation is to the board. And then take a vote on it. So that's our action item here. So I think we've got all the questions answered. I don't feel like I need any additional information. Do you feel like you've got everything you need? Okay. Yeah. Any initial thoughts? Where's you feeling this?
I might have missed it in transition and shifting from the sun. Well, okay, so the 5,700 is the initial to basically create the policy.
Yeah.
And then Andrew, or did you say when there needs to be additional work done or advisory, is there a standard rate, or is that basically like, I'm just curious long-term, like what we're looking at? I may have missed that.
Would you like me to answer?
Go ahead. Yeah. Oh, please
Okay.
go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
So the $5,700, will get you the policy, right? That's an all-in price. And then the only other cost that you would potentially incur would be related to the refinancing. Ongoing costs would only be that annual report if you choose to do that. And that's $1,750 essentially once a year.
Annually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool beans.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. So yeah, I mean, I feel like we should definitely do this.
Yeah, it doesn't, seems well thought out. It seems like it is it's not my area of expertise, but it seems like this is an established, process, not just something that, is we would do off the fly. And it sounds like it would be beneficial, and very proactive, which I really appreciate. So, I mean, I don't have any pushback or anything. It sounds like a good idea and also cost effective.
Yeah, totally. Nikki, go ahead.
I did want to also point out that when we first sat down for this presentation, Ian sat in with me, and then him and Cindy reviewed all of this as well. And they're recommending to the board that we move forward with it as well. So just wanted to let you guys know that too.
Thank you.
That's
That's
really
a
helpful.
helpful piece of
Yeah.
information. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just big picture, it's a small price to pay to try to get something in place to, manage a much larger issue.
Yes, agreed.
Totally right. Well, and there's no way that this is gonna get more manageable the longer we leave it alone, right? Like that is obviously not happening. The trend line is irrefutable. So I think it's a good time to do it. And I think that it's a good opportunity also to look at some of those cash flow issues and the ways in which we're seeing revenue shift as we kind of change some of these models, and measure A falls off and measure Z replaces it. There's a lot of stuff that's moving around, and we've got a little bit of lead time. So it feels like a really good opportunity to do it.
I have a quick, just random question. Whose idea was this? Where did this come from?
That is a good question. Whose idea was it?
Oh, I'd
Yes,
love
sir.
to take all the credit. Ha ha ha. No, Cal Muni emailed us, and I was like, maybe we should look into this. I forwarded it to Ian. He's like, yeah, let's set up the presentation and see what they have to say. And it went from there.
Yeah, so Andrew, thank you for reaching out. But just in general, all of my agencies I work with are doing this right now. They're looking at their policies. They're setting up, different avenues to manage it. We've set up 115 Trust, which Andrew will talk to us about later on, I'm sure, if we do engage with them. And it's very popular right now, and in a good way. It's the right move.
What all the kids are saying. They're like,
Exactly.
UAL management is so hot right now.
It's the hottest topic.
So hot.
Or it's never mind. I'm not gonna age myself. That's really, really helpful. I think that'll be helpful to the board, and it's helpful to me.
Yeah.
Not really having a good understanding of these types of things. Be like, okay, you tell me this is what we're supposed to do, then let's do it. So I appreciate that. That not everyone else is doing it, so we should do it. But it also adds a vote of confidence, really.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Okay. We ready to move on this, Camila? You want to talk about it more? You feel like you're good?
Good.
All right. Then I am going to ask for a motion to
Make a recommendation to
make a recommendation to the board. You do it. Yeah, you got it. I don't even.
I move that we make a recommendation to the board to engage, so the organization is Cal Muni,
Mhm.
in this UAL policy management process. We need all that detail.
Good enough. Yeah. No, second. I second that motion. Perfect. All right, we'll take a roll call vote. Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an aye vote for me. Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrew. We'll include this as our as part of our February board package. So that'll go before the full board, as I'm sure you know, the end of this month, which will be Monday the 28th, with our unanimous recommendation that we move forward.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you for the vote of confidence.
Yeah, no, this is exciting. I think it's a good time to do it. Nikki, this is probably more a question for you, but on that, will we basically, is it on Camila and I to explain all of this? Because I think we can probably do it, but we've got the slides.
I think
the
that's
three of
not a
us,
good
right?
we.
Camila's like,
I
do
would-
not include me in that we. Don't do it.
I can explain it as the big picture. We need these red numbers to go down
Yep.
and not up.
Well, do you think it would make sense to ask Andrew to present to the full board this information or no?
You know what? Not to volunteer Andrew's time or anything like that, but I'm kind of thinking that given some of the big picture questions we have around revenues and cash flows and projections, and I know Terry is going to have questions and I know Rushmore is going to have questions, I would feel, I mean, listen, I don't think we're going to get a ton of like people saying, I think this is a terrible idea, but I do think we might get some really good questions that will help inform the way we go forward on this. And so, yeah, I mean, if at all possible, I think it would be great to do even just a compressed version of what we did today, or ask the board to look at the video from today. It just occurred to me that they could do that too, because it's public record, but one or the other.
Also,
Yeah.
I will just say that I'm happy to be available. If
Okay.
that's the path you want to go down.
Okay. Thank you. So let's think about it.
best,
Yeah.
because then they can ask the expert, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll share the video with the full board, ask them to watch it, and then we'll have Andrew on hand with his slides in case
Sure.
the board wants any of them pulled up for specific questions or things like that.
Right. But I don't know that there's a need to repeat exactly what we just did for the board when they can watch it
Okay,
on
Yeah.
YouTube.
and we'll put you at the beginning of the meeting,
Yeah.
Andrew. So.
Totally. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
That seems great. All right. Perfect. Very cool.
All right, thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
You as well.
You as well.
All right. Very cool. So let's move to the next item, which is our item 5B, begins on page 39 of your package, and that is the review of our fiscal year 21-22 mid-year budget report and adjustments. So we've got a whole bunch of stuff. You want to walk through these, Nikki / Ian? What makes the most sense? Talk about them
Yeah,
at a
I'll
high
take it.
level. What do you feel?
I'll take it through on a pretty high level.
Okay.
And it looks like, Nikki, you're sharing your screen already, so we're good
Oh, great.
there. Overall, we did, as we've kind of been more aware of kind of where our funding sources are coming from, we're splitting this out on a fund by fund basis. So it does look slightly different from the original adopted budget, but similar to the financials as they've been presented, the first 5 months, I'm sorry, of the fiscal year so far. So we have the general fund here first. And the main adjustment here is to property taxes and passport services. So you'll see, based on what was levied as of December, we were able to adjust the budget to what we are actually expecting to receive, which is now just under 3.8 million for property taxes and assessments. And then the fines and fees are reduced for passport services because obviously those have been limited given
Right.
The pandemic situation that just doesn't seem to end. And then other small adjustments, other revenues, and then the transfer in there just this top line, that's a revenue, and the bottom, as you'll see, is an expense later. The general fund is funding the capital expenses ahead of the CFD bond proceeds. Once those are received, the capital fund will pay the general fund back. So that's kind of the in and out, as you're seeing, from this fund over to the capital fund and back.
Sorry, real quick. So capital fund, is that reserves?
Well, we don't have
No.
any reserves over there yet, but
Okay,
we will once we receive the proceeds. And that's sort of why the general fund is paying for it in advance, because we're waiting on the bond proceeds to come in. So the adjustment here is due to the adjustment of capital fund expenditures. We'll see.
oh,
in a
I get
moment.
it. Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sorry.
So we
Okay,
need
I get
a
what we're
little
saying.
bit extra money in advance of the bond proceeds. So that's what's coming in. So we'll have a revenue in the general fund once we get the bond proceeds in the capital, pay
Right.
back to general.
Right. So basically we're going to end
Right.
up fronting 335, and then that revenue is going to come back in from bond proceeds. So all we're
Exactly.
showing here is that expected revenue is going to be a little higher because we're
Yep,
spending.
yep, it's moving
Got
out,
it.
and then it's gonna come back in.
Forgot we were in revenues. Yes, got it.
Yes, of
Okay.
course. But you will see the same expense down at the bottom at the end of this report, as we transfer it out to the capital fund. This is
Yep.
where it comes back in later on,
Great.
from a budget standpoint.
Right.
Down to the next few lines, or I should just say the section of salaries and benefits. Overall, we have adjustments there based on staffing expectations. I know Nikki's made some moves between salaried and hourly employees, so that's where you see the shift there, as well as some of the positions that have been vacant. Our office manager position has not yet been fulfilled. And Nikki, I believe you have a couple more vacancies we considered in there for part of the year, but we did have I believe a couple new staff hired on, and this assumes that we do hire the office manager at the beginning of March. So conservatively, we have that position budgeted for, but hopefully we can get it filled.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, and
so
I'll
you'll see that.
I'll just point out
ahead.
that you see the big shift from this 808 to the 1 million, basically because we made the librarians exempt
Mhm.
instead of hourly. So that's
Right.
really where the biggest change came into play. And then
Right.
you see the reduction down here from in the hourly line.
Right. Right.
And if you
That
just
makes
shift
sense.
to line 13 total wages, it actually is an overall reduction due to the staffing vacancies.
And that was going to be my question. So the reason that we're looking at an amendment that brings the total wage amount down is because we've just had that spot unfilled. The office
Correct.
manager spot. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
And-
That, I mean,
and then-
seems reasonable to me.
Okay, perfect. I'll move on to the next section of salaries and benefits, which is basically the same idea. All these are shifting around based on expectations around those positions. But overall, a slight reduction of $13,700. So total salaries and benefits is a win there, reducing 48,000, unfortunately, due to some vacancies we have, but there is some savings there. Then down to operating expenses.
Well, hang on one second. Let's just pause for a minute. So I think maybe the most effective way to do this is just section by section, so we don't have to come back and find
Sure.
things.
Yeah,
So
if you have any
yeah,
questions, interrupt
let's
me.
just make sure. Well, I feel no compunction.
Please.
But let's just
No,
make sure, Camila, you and I are both happy with all of this before we move on to the next bit. So basically, bottom line, we're decreasing total salaries and benefits by, what is that, $50,000 from 2.8 down to 2.815. And that functionally, that $48,000 downward adjustment functionally just represents the fact that there's been a vacancy for a long time. Some stuff has shifted around. But that 2.815 does include the office manager position from March.
Yes.
So
Correct.
it's not like we're assuming that vacancy persists, because it won't, because it'll be filled and it'll be wonderful and it'll be a wonderful day. And Nikki won't have to do payroll anymore, and it'll be a magical time.
Nikki's gonna
everybody.
love that.
Yeah. Okay. So all of that is fine. It also, I see, given that we've just talked about it, I see our unfunded liability payment here of almost $200,000.
Perfect. As we are on the subject of that, that is what
Yeah.
it was for 21-22, and that's just the minimum.
Whew.
So
Man,
that is
that's a
what
lot
you
of
are,
money.
legally required to pay at a minimum, and it's going to go up next year.
Ugh.
As you saw, that was the chart that Andrew had showed with the bar graph going up until 2030 or whenever it was.
Brutal.
So it's a budget strain.
Yeah.
Given that, imagine, part of the, I don't want to get too far into what he's going to talk about,
Yeah.
but part of the strategy would be paying more of that in advance.
Yeah.
So you reduce some of the interest costs, get some of that off the books, and over 10 years, it stops going up and up and up. You sort of try to level it out. That's part of the strategy, but
So
topic for
with
another
that,
day.
I just thought of another question, probably should have been for Andrew. So as a part, with the policy, just trying to understand the language, the strategy will be built into the policy in terms of like, this is what he, or the organization is suggesting to be able to manage that. Will be tailor-made for us and built into that policy, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
Andrew is a specialist at this. I mean, we could kind of help you out with this. We see him at our other agencies. We could help you guys write a policy, but I really, one, he's the specialist. He's the expert. He's done it so many times. He's going to do a better job than we would. But part of that policy is just going to be strategizing, like you said, general outline. So this is what our liability is. Here's how we can try to attack it. So for example, we implemented a policy at the Orange County Local Agency Formation Commission, where they take 50% of net revenues at the end of the year and put it in a trust to fund the liability. So in that sense, it's not committing, I'm going to put 100,000 in a year, but it's saying if there is overages of revenues that we can delegate somewhere else, we're going to commit to put half of them towards the liability, something like that.
Yeah, and I was just looking at last year's mid-year budget, and last year the payment was 168.6.
There was a huge jump from 21 to 22 for everyone.
Like it went up by $30,000 in 1 year.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's with a 3% savings because we make a lump sum payment at the beginning of the fiscal year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I mean,
right. I know.
Okay. This all feels like basically right to me. Anything else, Camila, for you in salaries and benefits?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, cool.
Okay, moving on to operating here. I did describe a lot of the changes on the staff report as well. Nikki and I worked on that. So if there's anything that sticks out to you, let me know. I don't really want to go through each and individual line unless there's a question. But the big one here is obviously facilities, grounds, and maintenance.
Mm-hmm.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, 31. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong place. We did have that contract change with Verde Facilities for janitorial services. So that's the main change there. And then we did reduce structures and improvements, equipment, furniture, and fixtures by 30,000 combined. And when we do the budget every year, that was sort of our quote unquote capital spending. If there were things that happened around the library that needed replacement with a structure or, fixtures, maybe the air conditioning, something like that. Mm-hmm. That's where it would come from. We're not going to use that funding because we have the CFD coming in. So we're going to have plenty of money for that once those bond proceeds come in.
What? So yeah, reasonable. That all makes sense to me. On the janitorial thing, is the shift from, I've lost whatever the budget amount was, 53 to 98. Does that reflect the fact that we have a contract, or did the price of the contract double?
No, it's because when we first established this budget, we weren't in contract with them.
We were just doing it all in-house. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't do the RFP till after the beginning of the fiscal year. So that is the difference, is the cost of the contract, basically.
Got it. That makes sense. So is it reasonable to assume that will be a pretty consistent, that will be, 98, 100, whatever, going forward, that's going to be our kind of janitorial line item, presuming that we, continue to contract that out.
Right, yeah, it's a monthly rate we pay. I think it's like
Sure.
4,300 or something, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, that's incredibly reasonable. Development, travel, and training, that's down just because we didn't go anywhere because COVID. Why is advertising and marketing lower? Or is it high? No, it's higher. Excuse me. I misread that. Okay. It's higher
Yeah, we're
because we're
adding
recruiting.
1,500, exactly. Yeah, all the recruiting costs that Nikki's incurred this year,
Yes.
working on the staffing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely the recruitment piece. I've had to spend a lot of money advertising positions this year,
Yeah. Well,
unfortunately.
hopefully that number declines markedly next year.
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my other screen with your list, Ian. So I'm going through just to see if there's anything else.
Sure, no problem.
That all seems reasonable to me.
And overall, we see total operating expenses, it's about $35,000, mainly due to the contract, as we discussed, facilities.
Yeah. What gets, not that I think it's that big a deal because it's $500, but like what gets paid out of a miscellaneous, like what is that petty cash? Is that like, what is that?
That is actually petty cash.
Oh, okay. There
It's
you
funny
go.
that you mentioned that.
Reasonable.
But in general, it's just a little slush bucket. I do want to plan to put maybe 500 or 1,000 there a year going forward, just because if something is really weird that happens that we pay for, like some small little expense that doesn't belong somewhere else, it's kind of better to put it there as opposed to somewhere where we kind of expect things. And we're used to a very structured expenses. That was actually the fact that after, a while we did, after, the previous office manager left, we had some vacancies. We came in, we kind of cleaned up a lot of the stuff with the cash. We figured out what was going on with the petty cash between the districts, the two branches and all that. And that was part of that expense actually.
Mhm.
Okay.
So just counting and receipts and all that.
Okay. Gotcha. Reasonable.
Mhm.
Okay. I think I'm good on operating expenses. Camila, anything for you? Okay. Professional services.
Hooray.
Okay.
Yay.
That is mainly our line there. We've been helping you guys out a lot.
And thank you
Nikki
for that.
with the vacancy.
Oh my
Sure, no
God.
problem.
Are you
So
kidding me?
We've
We are
safe
very
to say
grateful.
we've blown our budget. I'm so sorry, but I've been happy to spending a lot more time with Nikki lately, and you guys as well.
Well, we appreciate you guys because absent somebody in that office manager position and all the adjustments we've had to make, we've been, I think navigating this with far less disruption than one might expect otherwise.
That's kind of what we specialize in, and we do have. You guys aren't the only ones. We've had a couple this year, and we usually do every year. There's
Sure.
a vacancy, and we get busier, but we're happy to step in and help.
Great. All right. We're down on lawyer costs. Love that. Hate paying the lawyers. Like to pay them less. What do we anticipate that we're going to be spending? Like, I guess basically my question is, what comprises the remainder of that 20 through the rest of the fiscal year?
It's
Just
really
like
just a
contract
safety
review and
blanket.
stuff, like just standard, like look at this
Yeah.
contract, look at this PSA. Is this fine?
Yeah, professional services agreements. Every once in a while, I have to have them review something personnel related. And we very well may not spend all that, which is definitely the goal.
Yeah. It's kind
of one of those things where it's like, you don't really know.
No, listen, I'd rather leave the 20 alone, but I would love to see us, come through the year at like 14, 15, something like that, rather than 20 if we can. But if we need to spend it, we need to spend it. I just wanted to get your sense of like, is there anything that's costing money on that front that shouldn't be, or that we could?
Well, and I think a good portion, I mean, I'd have to look at the bill from November, but we had to pay them a lot to compile my evaluation and review and talk. And You know,
Okay.
like that in
Yeah.
itself was expensive, to be honest, but
Well, and this just reminds me again, like that is something that we need to like, because we could save a lot of money if we did it in a smarter way, and we could come up with an evaluatory process that yielded more benefit.
mhm.
So
Yeah, but
Terry's
that
going to
was
be
a good
excited
amount.
to hear that we can save
Mhm.
some money. Okay, that's just one more reason to make sure it
Mhm.
happens this year. Okay, that's helpful. Other consultants, who else is in that category? Who's in there?
Nikki, I think that is, it's not NIC Partners, is it? It's, who did,
Trying to think, because Jennifer Coyle, our
We-
professional development consultant, is part of that budget above the staff development, training, and travel.
Yeah.
So she's not part of that budget. Oh, you
we
know what? I
talked
think
about this.
we did talk about it. I'm
Who
trying
is,
to remember.
it's a new new consultant I think you started working with. Let me pull up the file really quick.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
No, it's fine.
Because most of them are part of the capital fund.
Right.
You
Well,
know,
that was
so
why
I'm
I was
trying to
curious.
remember. Yeah.
I know we do plan on using that for the technology consulting going forward. So you'll see down line 47, that was
Mhm.
part of it. Just because I think consultants other kind of captures everything, and
Right.
cutting down on lines and confusion is always easier.
Sure. Well, and it makes sense
Which is,
to
I think,
collect
why we didn't
consultants in one
reduce.
place.
Yeah, which is why I think we didn't reduce it, because we knew if we had any technology consulting, we would budget it out of this line instead.
Yeah, I guess so. That makes sense in the sense that there's like 17 for technology. That's fine. We've spent 6 on, we're going to find out what in a minute. So that puts us at like 24 or something. And presumably the remaining 5 and a bit would be what we would pay our good friends that we just talked to. At
Yes.
Community, right? They would go in this line.
Yes.
Okay, so that number makes sense to me. I'm just
Exactly.
interested to know what the 6225 is.
Which we might actually want to consider that in the budget.
Like, is that
thinking
built
about it
into
now.
your assumption, or is it not? Because we
That
should
is not, the
definitely
5,700 for Cal Muni is not built into this yet. So that's a good,
okay. Yeah, so I guess I understand the 17. I want to understand what else goes into that 30 though.
yeah, I'm gonna have to look into that. I thought we had a
Mhm.
note on here, Nikki.
Yeah, I can't remember either now.
And I'd have to look at the detail. It's gonna take me too long to pull up, you know,
Okay.
the financial data and all that. But we had 30 budgeted originally,
Mhm.
and so far through December, we've only used 6,200. So I'm not sure what that 30 was originally intended for, but we didn't
think
want to
it-
move it.
Yeah, I think it was a carryover from last year. Let me
Mhm.
look at what we put aside. And last year we paid like some of the ballot measure and
Yep.
those types of expenses out of that account. So
Mhm.
I don't know if we just maintained the same number.
Right, because the 30 last year for sure, that was our political folks and that was
Mhm.
polling was about 30.
Yep.
But
Let me see.
and it may be that some of the 6225 is, oh no, that wouldn't make sense because that's a year past. No, never mind.
Well, last year we budgeted 100,000.
Oh, did we?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then
well,
took it down
There
to
was-
70 at the mid-year.
Yeah, there was something
we had
going
to
on
pay
last
the-
year.
Well, that was all
Yeah,
the
last year it was
ballot
all the-
measure stuff.
Yeah, all the ballot measure stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I don't have a problem with paying consultants. I just want to know who's in this line
Mhm.
item. And I want to make sure that we factor the $5,700, $6,000, whatever for Cal Muni in as well. So if it needs to go up to 36, then fine. Or if we can keep it at 30 and that actually covers whatever. But I think I would just like some more detail on whatever this line item
Yeah.
is.
Okay.
That's a great
Yeah.
point, Nikki. Let's update that before it goes to the board.
Full board. Mhm. Okay,
Okay. Cool.
will do.
All right.
Point, Katie.
Camila, anything else here?
No.
Okay. All right, IT.
Okay, IT, we did just talk about the 47, so that's where we're getting the big savings is technology consulting. So assuming that 30,000 could cover some of this if we needed it, we looked at the $17,000 budget and Nikki and I couldn't tell what it was for. Past years, we never spent anything close to that in this account. So I'm not really sure where, you know, what we plan to spend. I think in prior years, we spent maybe at the most about 5,000, 6,000.
Okay, well, now I'm even more confused about the 30. Like,
no, I think the 17 was, we were going to have to use E-rate consultants because you have to re-up it every 5. But because Christopher got that huge grant last year and we updated the infrastructure, we still have E-rate consultants, but we're not having to touch the money at all right now. So I think he believed we were going to have to spend a lot of money on E-rate consulting. And then we didn't have to, is basically what I think Christopher told me. But again, to Ian's point, like, we're not going to put this in information technology, even when we do have to have consulting in the future.
right, that should be a consultant's other line item. Okay, but then, right, so, you know.
And then line 44 here, just assuming based on the bills we're seeing. And Nikki, I think we talked about this, but I can't remember. Your internet service, the data and everything, is that based on usage? Because it doesn't seem like it's a fixed fee, but basically we saw September come in a little bit higher than we expected. So we're updating that, adding $5,000 here. And then we're not anticipating $35,000 worth of equipment purchases, so we're reducing that by 10.
What technology equipment do we need to buy that isn't covered by the infrastructure grant that we bought everything with?
It would only be like staff computer replacements, because with the emergency connectivity funding, we bought 40 additional laptops for checkout.
Right.
Then 16 5G hotspots.
Right.
And like, it could potentially be more hotspots. And they are much more expensive than the 4G ones, but also a lot faster. But again, also cost more in terms of monthly bills too. So, and that may have been the difference, Ian, now that I'm thinking about it, because that's when the 5G hotspots came in.
That makes sense. So, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things I want to work with David on. And one of the things him and I did together in Glendale was a much more consistent replacement schedule of like equipment across the board.
Well, right, because there's got to be planned obsolescence for all this stuff. Like, you know, it's going to need to get swapped out. Makes sense. Okay. I'm just making my own list of stuff that I want to make sure we figure out, because I won't remember. So it's line 41, consultants other. And then you said we're not planning on spending any money on technology consulting.
No.
So we're not actually transferring that up to line 41. No. We're just zeroing it out. Okay. So, right. Okay. So 24.8 of mystery costs in line 41. Okay. All right.
Nikki, I know we know who the vendor is for that. I can't, the name escapes me right now. I thought we had a note in our workbook for consultants other.
Oh, it's fine. We'll get there. It's fine. You'll look it up. I know it. There's a reason.
Do you remember what they do? Maybe that was
they're new, so that's why it's escaping me right now.
Okay. That's not, is it paycheck stuff? Is that HR stuff in there, or that's someplace else?
That is I believe that's in payroll costs.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I don't want to sidelight on some, as I know we've talked about it. You'll figure it out.
And it's not the folks that are doing the app that falls under technology.
Oh yeah. Where's the app money?
That might be what it is. Is what you're not thinking of My Libro or
Yeah.
Conversite AI,
Mm,
Ian?
No, that name's not ringing a bell, but
We're paying them, what, 25, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And where was that before? Is that paid for out of a grant or is that
No,
something else?
no,
So
and that was
that wasn't
something
even in the budget?
that might be what it is, Ian, because we went into contract with them after the fiscal year.
That would have been
We
like
presented
October,
that to the
November,
board
yeah.
in September, October, and then went into contract with them, I think in November.
okay. So we'll look into that.
That would make sense math wise to me.
Yep.
But
yep.
then that 30 would need to go up if it is indeed whatever's been spent to date, plus the app, plus CalMuni. We need to be at
Right.
like 36, 37.
Just making notes.
Mhm. Do you have the sheet up that we were making notes on?
I do.
Because I'm afraid to pull it up on mine if I will end up changing the screen or something.
I do have it up. There's nothing next to that line as
Okay.
far as notes go, because we didn't make any adjustments. So
Right.
Right.
I think
Okay.
we looked into the activity for that account. We're like, a light bulb went on, but then we forgot to note it.
Okay. Well, let's keep moving. I mean, I will figure it out, right? But
Yeah.
let's keep rolling.
Okay.
Okay.
So everybody good on IT then?
I'm good. Camila, you good? Okay.
Wonderful. Okay, library materials 51 to 61. That's pretty self-explanatory. Those are just moving around within the categories. So you'll see a net budget change of 0 on line 61 in that third column there. More was allocated to books, electronic databases and subscriptions, and purchase suggestions, while reduced in DVDs. Who uses DVDs anymore? And the mobile library collection is actually being funded over in the donations and grants.
Cool. Wait a second. I'm gonna just look at adopted, amended are supposed to be the same number, supposed to be different numbers. So we've got 288.5 and 288.501, but there's nothing that has a dollar in that column. So I think your math is wrong and your percent change is wrong.
That is really bad math.
So that's really incorrect. Yeah.
That is weird. I've actually never seen that happen before. Because there's no
anything that's a one. You probably
there's
just
not
have a
one
formula
anywhere
error
in
there.
Yep. Thank you
Yeah.
for that. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay. All right, we'll get that fixed.
Okay. So we're looking at actually, sorry, I'm just doing the math in my head. So 5 is a wash, 9, 6, that's 3 more, and 2. So it's basically we're staying the same, yeah.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay, right. We're just shifting stuff around.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And we spent half the budget, which is good. A lot
Okay.
of times that doesn't get spent in a timely manner, so that we end up with it not getting spent.
Okay.
So that makes me happy as well.
Me too. I just saw in the chat, and Camila, I'm going to ask you to say this out loud because again, the chat's not a public record. Looks like you need to ask for just a quick break.
Yes.
So can
Sorry
we?
about that.
That's okay. That's okay. So let's just take a brief recess. Let's take 5 minutes.
Okay.
And we'll pause right here. We'll come back and we'll hit the rest of this. So
Okay.
everybody good? Back at 2:30?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. We'll
Sounds
just
great.
press pause. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. 231. Well, you can't win them all. Oh my God, 232. Holy cannoli. All right. I will bring us back into open session from our recess at 2:32 p.m. We're still live. We're still recording. We're rocking and rolling. All right. So, programs.
Okay, moving on. Programs. Very little adjustments here, actually, just in volunteer services, due to the lack of being able to coordinate those. Another COVID-19 situation.
Yep. Okay.
And then I assume there's no questions on that.
I have no questions. Camila, anything for you?
Okay, and then line 72 represents that transfer out to capital we discussed. So that is funding the CFD expenses ahead of time prior to receiving those bond proceeds, and then the capital fund will pay that back. So that's why you saw the revenue up at the top. And then the good news on line 73 is that we're increasing the transfer out to reserves by $23,750. So that is basically the net impact of these budget adjustments here is that we are planning to add to our reserves at the end of the year a total of $51,000, $51,650.
Sweet. Love adding to reserves.
Yes, always
great.
good when we can create a budget that does that.
That's nice.
And then, eventually that might be something we include into the policy planning, is that, that $51,000, like I mentioned before, maybe half of that goes towards the pension. Or
Well, yeah,
maybe-
and we should probably, I'm embarrassed to say that I don't know if we have this. We don't have a comprehensive reserves policy, right? So we should have something that is a policy for not just our general reserves, but our capital, capital maintenance reserves on a go forward after we get some CFD money.
Correct. And that's actually something we're working on right now.
Okay.
And I'll be meeting with Nikki on is kind of updating those old financial policies.
Yeah.
And bringing them up to date, because I don't think they've been revisited in depth probably in a while.
No, they have not. And I know you guys are working on those, but I think having a reserves policy as part of those is really smart. And
Definitely, we'll be focusing intensely on that.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So with the exception of line 41, which whatever in the math funkiness in materials, I'm good on this.
Okay,
Camila,
perfect.
anything for you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. It looks good, guys. Nice job.
Awesome. We do have two other funds.
Yep. I know. No, I know.
Okay.
And we're
Nikki,
done.
Nikki, I just got into QuickBooks. It takes a while, so the recess allowed me the opportunity. Who is North Star Consulting?
Oh, that's
That's
our
Jennifer.
professional development consultant.
Okay, I think that's where we have some of that going into consultants other right now.
Oh, okay.
Does that ring a bell?
It does, but I as I mentioned when we were talking about that, I believe we budgeted for her work here in staff development, training, and travel. Did we
Okay.
talk about
What about the
I'm
money for
wondering-
the board? Is that?
I think that might be what we talked about, was charging her expenses from that to the consultant's other line rather
They
than
could go,
staff
it's one of those
development.
gray areas. We just need to decide where we want to put it. It is staff development. It's also consulting work. So,
Well, but there's two pieces, right? Because there's the consulting work she did as part of staff development, and then there's the consulting work she did as part of board development, because she met with the trustees, did our retreat. So there's probably two separate
mhm.
bills functionally, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
one should definitely be under staff development, training, and travel. And I think, didn't we consolidate out that board development line item, or is that still in there? We used to have a board training and something line item.
We do have trustee professional development, and that is within the staff expense and professional development.
Oh, well then all of it should be up there in 34.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I believe, okay, so is that where we want to put it?
Yeah.
And maybe
And you
that
know what,
line,
sorry, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, maybe that line is better titled staff expense and professional development. Maybe that the description, because it doesn't really say that it includes the board professional development, or we could also split that out to its own line if it helps.
I don't know that it's hugely
Okay.
essential to do that. I think that just that if I were looking for consulting costs, I would expect to see them in consultants other. But if it's somebody who's doing professional development stuff, it makes sense for it to be up there. So yeah.
So we may need to shift some of that up, Ian.
Yeah, it
Because-
should move. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it needs to shift, especially because we still have people going to PLA. That's going to come out of that budget as well, which I know we budgeted for at the 17-1. But we'll want to look at all of that and make sure we make those adjustments. Okay.
That's line 34. Okay.
Perhaps if we called that professional development and staff expenses, would that be a little bit more descriptive? And it would still include things like training, education, travel, meetings.
I think the way it's labeled now
I
makes
think
sense.
it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think it's fine.
Okay.
And I don't
If-
mind board stuff being subsumed in that. That's totally
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll want to move that. I'll make a note.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so that gets us to our donations and grants fund. This is the fun one because Nikki got us $250,000. I don't know if you want to talk about that for a second, Nikki.
Sure. Yeah. The board, as you know, Assemblymember Holden was able to get us $250,000 from the state, which is awesome. Yeah, so that money is funneling through the California State Library. We had to write up a grant application of how we're planning to spend it. And we added that in as revenue since we weren't aware of this was going to happen when we built this budget back at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then in terms of expenses, like what we're planning on doing is purchasing some vending machines. So what we've called it is expanding. Are we going to call it
expanding our footprint?
Yeah.
So on the monthly financials, we'll split it out, but here we can't really show 6 different funding sources, year-to-date actuals.
Yeah.
It'd be like an insane amount of columns. So it's all sort of consolidated in here.
So we built in the 250 because this 25,712 is the emergency connectivity funding we already received.
That's the laptops and hotspots and whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we're amending it to include the 250,000 that we'll be getting from the state. I signed off on that, I think last week, and they said it takes 6 to 8 weeks. So we should get the money this fiscal. And then most of it is going into equipment, furniture, and fixtures because we're planning to buy like library material vending machines, as well as another mobile library unit.
Right.
Besides that, we also put some money into
website development.
Website development.
Smart.
And was it, no, not equipment. Was there anything else, Ian?
It was the vending machines, maintenance for the equipment, so electricity and internet, the website development, and then the mobile library van, another unit.
Yeah.
I guess I have a bunch of questions about all of those things. But before that, I wonder, this is maybe not no, because it's going to have to go to the board. The column on the far right, percent of budget amended. I wonder, it seems super confusing to me because what I keep looking over there to see is like percent of change, right? So I expect to see, oh, we put this up by 60%, or this is dropped by 7%, or it's a 0% change. Percent budget amended I don't know that it tells me anything useful. Like or maybe I'm reading this incorrectly. So what is it supposed to be telling me?
So that is basically telling you where you're at December 2021 year to date with the new budget. So like, for example, line 3, the library foundation, we received all the money we expect to receive. So we're at 100%. And we know we're not going to receive any more money, so it'll stay at 100. If you want to see a budget to budget comparison column, we can also put that there and replace that.
Oh, percent. Okay. I didn't understand. Percent budget amended means basically year to date in the new proposed budget,
Exactly.
not the percent by which we have amended the budget, because that made zero sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, maybe it would be better titled. We can think on that for a sec. Percent of new budget. Year to date percent.
Yeah, I think year to date updated or whatever. But I would like to, I don't know if we need a percent change. I don't know if that's hugely critical because you've got the number right there, right? Like, do I really, I can do the math in my head to figure out what the percent change is. But yeah, that column is giving me the itis. So I think if we can relabel it, it would help because I didn't know what it was telling me. But now what you said, Ian, makes a lot of sense. Like,
definitely. Yeah, it's kind of just trying to tell you where we would be right now, halfway through the year, if we had this new budget.
Correct. Okay, that I totally understand. That's like hypothetical world year to date is this, right? But that I think just call it something else that expresses that.
Gotcha. We'll update that.
Okay, so let's talk about the whole vending machines stuff. So it sounds like, if I'm understanding this correctly, the capital outlay to buy whatever these vending machines are is covered by the cost of this grant completely, right? But the replacement cost is not, the maintenance cost is not, the overhead in terms of electricity is not. Do we have to pay to place them anywhere? Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there a placement? Basically what I'm trying to get at is, I love that the purchase price is covered, but what is the ongoing impact to the budget year over year that would not be covered by this grant or any replacement, grant? Like, it's not like there's going to be another infusion of $250,000.
That's a little hard to say what the ongoing cost would be before we have them. But we do have $2,500 from that funding allocated for internet and electricity, at least until it's used up. So some of that, and yeah, I believe that's it. So we've got $2,500 to allocate towards those costs until it's gone. From what I understand.
Okay, so, and let me just say, I'm not necessarily opposed to any of this. I think it's cool and I think it's awesome, but I just want to understand where the money to consistently deliver these services comes from, because that is not built in anywhere into a revenue stream that I see, right?
Well, I mean, really the only cost we're talking about is like upkeep and electricity and internet. Because,
well, what if somebody drives a car into one of them? Or what if one of them, stops work? Like, there's a replacement cost for these things. Like, they're not going to work forever. So is that amortized over a usable lifetime of what, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Like, how long do we imagine that these will work for?
I really don't know, to be honest with you, and going to be doing research before we actually purchase them.
Okay.
But we had to give the state something.
Oh, for sure. No, I get that.
You know what I
I
mean?
get that.
So, like,
Yeah.
I'm going to PLA specifically to like do a lot of research on these. So I'll have a better sense and idea of that probably as we build next year's budget. But again, we tried as much as possible to not spend any of this money on something that would be ongoing.
Right.
Because we can never assume that we're going to get more money from the state in this way. And we really wanted to focus on what are we going to do when we're closing these libraries in terms of growing our footprint and providing services in other places. But now that we are, it's actually official. We're going to have to identify where we're going to put them. How much each one's going to cost. And there's lots of different options. So, I mean, I don't think I can really answer that yet.
And that's fine. I guess I think that's reasonable, right? I guess question number one is, do we imagine that, and I'm looking at this, I'm sorry, I'm not adding fast enough in my head. are we spending that money this fiscal year or no? Like, are we buying those units this fiscal year? Like
That is
before
the plan, yes.
June 30th? Okay.
Mhm.
So is that going to come to the board for discussion? Are we going to learn about it, or is it?
Yeah.
Like, because I think I just basically what I'm saying is I feel like I need a whole lot more information to feel great about it, especially in terms of like where in the budget that gets covered for maintenance, upkeep, replacement if we need it, obsolescence, all of that.
Yeah, they'll definitely have to, because
Okay.
of that.
It's going to be expensive.
What did we put aside? I think it was like 150,000 of it is for the vending machines.
Okay.
They're expensive.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
the board will definitely have to approve that purchase, as well as another mobile library unit.
Totally.
Like, those are going to be the two big ones,
Two big
basically.
ones. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm fine with that, because this is just basically an initial estimate. So
Mhm.
all that's reasonable. I'm not expecting that we know all that information now, like, but just going forward, it'll be good to kind of know how that all shakes out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll
Yeah.
open it up to if there's any other questions with donations and grants. Otherwise, I think we covered all the adjustments.
Yeah, I think I'm good on that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then let's move over to the capital fund, Nikki. This one's pretty simple. For the most part, we're just anticipating more project management fees this fiscal year as we kind of wrap up the CFD and get to the end of that road. So that's the $36,000 adjustment there.
Because, yeah, we know that there's going to be some more coming in before we potentially have the proceeds in. So based on what's already been spent.
Yep. Makes sense. Okay. Reasonable. Wait. Okay. Why am I not understanding this? We're bringing in 72. We basically need to pay Racklin an extra 36, right?
Mhm.
Transfer out to general 36.
It's a little bit confusing.
I don't understand what we're doing here. I'm sorry.
It's a little bit confusing, I know, and I'm sorry, but it's the only way to make this work from an accounting standpoint. So I'll try and
Okay.
explain it the best I can.
Okay.
So initially, let's just talk for the whole budget, forget the amendments. We
Yeah.
need to transfer in $335,000 to cover this fund's expenses before we get the proceeds.
Right.
Once we get the proceeds, we'll pay back 335. So that's the transfer out on line 15
Mm-hmm.
back to the general. Whereas you see line 3 is where it's originally transferred in. So general puts the money in the capital fund. Then we pay all the expenses. We get the bond proceeds in, and then we pay back the general fund, the 335. And then the top line, transfer in from reserves, that's basically the use of the capital fund reserves that did actually get used because we paid back the general fund. So say we received $20 million of proceeds. At the end of the year, we're not going to have 20 million anymore. We're going to have 20 million less 335,000 because we paid back the general fund for what was used.
Is it the case? Is it the case that it's just representing the fact that the 335 passes through the general fund on its way to this fund? Or is it actually, like, basically, I guess, is the money really coming from reserves, or is it really coming from the general fund?
In the end, at the end of the fiscal year, it'll be taken from the CFD proceeds that we
I understand that part. Yeah, I get that part.
Okay.
Are we pulling money out of reserves to do this? Not really, right? We're pulling it out of our operating budget.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's why I'm confused by line 2. What is, like?
Well, eventually we'll have a bucket of capital. We'll call them reserves, capital cash, capital funds, whatever you want to call it. That's going to be funding the capital fund projects.
Mm-hmm.
So when we create an annual budget, we're going to say, all right, we're going to use this much cash. That's basically what that line is.
So that 299 to 335 is not district reserves. That's capital reserves, which is basically the money we've fronted to this fund.
Exactly.
Correct? Okay.
Yeah, right.
And so, wait, so are we fronting this year? Are we fronting 335 or are we fronting 670?
335. Because, okay.
I'm sorry.
The 335 is a revenue and the 335 is also an expense. So it's net zero.
Right.
So general fund brings the money in, 335, and then we pay back the general fund, 335 expense. So that's why essentially, if you took both those lines out, say we had the money in the capital fund already and we didn't need to move money over and back, the revenues would only be 335.
I get it. So the amount that should be in capital reserves is 335.
But
and all of this is just saying we got to put it there and put it back.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And we have to track that money because it's going across two different places. We're bringing it in from general over to capital. We got to pay it back because we don't actually have the money yet.
Right.
So it's just the best way to track it.
Okay. I get you.
Awesome.
I don't know if I really understand that, but I believe you. Put it that way.
That's okay. That's okay.
Trust me, Katie. I've been like, can we just not? It looks so confusing.
It does look confusing. I'm like, wait, do we need twice as
confusing.
much money? Whose
Your
reserves
expenses-
are they? Oh my
Your
God.
expenses, quote unquote, look like they're double, but they're really half of that because one's a transfer out. So next year, the capital won't need to do this because we'll have all the money. It'll look a lot less confusing.
Okay. I would just suggest that maybe we call line 2 transfer in from capital reserves because people are going to have the same question, like, is this coming out of the district reserves?
That's a great point.
Okay.
Gotcha. We will update that.
Okay. I mean, it net zeros, so it's fine, but like, I get it. That makes sense. Thank you. I understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And this doesn't reflect, obviously, the capital fund doesn't reflect the bond proceeds because nowhere on here does it say, $23 million or whatever.
No,
Why? But what's going to have to, because we're going to get that money before the end of the fiscal year, right?
Yeah, and it's just a matter of presentation. I mean, when we get the money, it's not essentially a revenue.
Correct.
Because think of we're looking at this as kind of what are we going to plan to spend that year. We're just looking at 1 year.
Right.
So really the revenue in this fund is going to be what cash do we plan to use?
Right.
So each year it's going to just kind of, there's not any revenues in the capital fund aside from when we say, all right, we're spending this money, so we'll recognize it as a revenue at that point, just for our annual budget.
Interesting. Well, we'll need a statement at some point that does show like, hey, this is the total bond proceeds. This is the percentage that we've spent down, right?
On your financials each month, the bond proceeds will show in our
Yeah.
cash. So I'll be, all of a sudden we're going to be showing like 24 million in cash, whatever it's going to be.
Right.
So you will see that on the balance sheet that we prepare for you each month and also on your audited financials.
Right.
It will reflect the cash balance of those bond proceeds,
Okay.
just not on a revenue and expense.
No, I get that. Because it's right. It's not. Yes, that's true. Okay. I'm good with this. Camila, anything on capital fund?
No.
Okay.
Trying to follow along.
All right.
So I'll stop sharing.
So I think at this point, with the exception of what we've talked about as like little adjustments, I mean, overall, I'm good. Camila, how are you feeling on this?
Feeling okay. I
Okay.
understand what I understand and I trust you on the rest.
Well, and I do think we should talk about the pieces if there are pieces where it's useful to like dive in further, because I want to make sure that you feel like you've got a good handle on all of it. So like,
Yeah,
If we need more time,
Thank
we
you.
need more time. Okay. Okay, so our action today is to recommend the approval of the mid-year budget adjustments for fiscal year 21-22. So I think the motion would be to recommend to the board that we approve the mid-year budget adjustments with those small, clarifications that we talked about today.
So moved.
All right, and I'll second. Any further discussion or debate?
No.
Hearing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Trustee Wilkerson.
Aye.
And an I vote from me. Great job on this, guys. This is a ton of work. Thank you. And thank
Thank
you for
you.
bearing with me on all of those.
No problem. Happy to help.
Yeah, that's great. And if you want to just email me whatever the word on the street is about those consulting line items, that's great. Or if you want to put it in the report, whatever you want to do, both probably. That'd be good.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Nikki, if you want to put together just a little idea of what you think we should actually have. I know Cal Muni is going to be in there.
Yeah, I made some notes.
Because I know we're moving out. We're going to move out that development consultant. So I'm not sure how much we actually do need in there.
Yeah, we'll connect on that.
Okay, thanks.
All right, great. So then I need to write a little budget committee report. But I'm basically just going to say, we looked at all the stuff we looked at. We've got the questions we've had. We talked to Cal Muni. That's all pretty straight ahead. And we'll encourage the board to watch the video from X timestamp to Y timestamp, whatever it is. And we'll have Andrew around to answer questions. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
All right, cool. And I need to have that to Diego by the 18th. Ah, great. Okay. All right, but you guys are also going to do a staff report on this, I'm assuming. So mine will be very brief by the 18th. Okay, great. All right, so that is, I believe, all of our agendized business for the day. Proposed future agenda items. Well, I mean, we obviously got to put the budget together for the next fiscal year. I know you guys are working on the financial policies, so we'll presumably see those at some point. What else is coming up? Well, if we approve this community thing, then we'll have a discussion around all that jazz. So when is our next actual meeting? Because I was super confused about when this meeting was. So I want to make sure I understand when we're
Yeah,
meeting
it's
next.
supposed to be the first Thursday every 3 months at 1 o'clock. So that would put us at the first week of May, I believe.
But if we're doing the Cal Muni stuff, we would meet sooner, right? Like, I mean, that's our next scheduled meeting would be May, the first Thursday would be May 5th at 1 p.m.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the next quarterly. All right, hang on. So that's the next quarterly budget committee meeting is the 5th at 1 p.m. But then it sounds like we'll probably need some special meetings between now and then.
Yeah, let's, once the board, I would assume, passes this, then we'll
Right.
figure out what next steps are and
Okay.
when we need, if and when we need to bring you guys together.
Well, I would like to be involved in the process of developing this policy and understanding it because this is a long-term fiscal issue for the board. So I think board involvement is really important on it. So I definitely, whatever that process looks like, I'd like the budget committee involved in it. I think it's right in our wheelhouse. Okay. Okay. Any other future agenda items anybody can think of? All right. Well, with that, I think it just remains for me to say thank you so much, Ian. Thank you so much, Nikki, for putting all this together. I think we're in great shape. We're looking good.
Thank you.
Yeah, really, really good stuff, guys. All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Ooh, any objection? Hearing none, I declare us adjourned at 3:01 p.m. Thanks so much, guys.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, we'll see you later.
So, now we're gonna jump on another.
We're on the other link for our redistricting meeting.
Okay, I
Yep.
just want to let you know, I'm gonna do that from the car because
Okay.
I have to start moving to get my little dude.
Yep.
Okay.